All right, now we come to section 14, professional advice, broker liability. Mark, what's going on here?
So this is the section that every agent needs to read because this is the one when everybody wants to blame you that the square footage was not $25.99 as per the MLS, but it was $23.99, and now they want to sue you because they lost 100 square feet. So this is the section that's ultimately going to say, buyer or seller, if it's that important to you, you need to independently verify it. You should solely rely on your professional inspectors, government agencies, verify square footage, anything that materially affects the value of the property. So as we go through it, you can kind of read on your own, like line 408 says you're supposed to consult your appropriate professionals for legal, tax. So a lot of times when you're out there with a client, a buyer may ask you a legal question, and you may or may not know the answer. And the way to handle that is you should always preface it with, I'm not an attorney, but here's what I understand. Now go verify that information with your attorney. I'm not an accountant. Here's what I understand. Now you need to go verify with that. And I would recommend following those up with an email.
Yes.
You asked me this question, and I informed you should verify all this information with your tax professional, with your legal professional. Because, believe it or not, you may only have 1 or 2 properties right now, but at some point you may have 10, 20 properties you're juggling. 30 days later, you're not going to remember what you told a particular buyer. So to follow it up with written correspondence will help pad your file so you'll remember.
So that's the biggest thing, is the best way to prepare for a lawsuit is before you're ever sued.
Correct.
And document in email.
Yeah. And also, what would normally happen, let's say in the unfortunate event, you get the psycho buyer who says, I understand this contract says I was supposed to, but I still think you are responsible for dealing with this. If you're with Keller Williams, then you're going to have what we call an E&O policy. That's errors and omissions. You pay, if there's a lawsuit, then what happens is you are going to pay a deductible. I believe right now it's $5,000.
It's $5,000. If you are not capped, the Market Center will cover $1,500 of it, or 30% of it.
Right.
And you would be responsible for $3,500 of the deductible. If you are capped and receiving 100%, you're responsible for the $5,000 deductible.
And what that does, ultimately, it gets you an attorney, usually out of Connecticut area or somewhere along there, depending on who they're using. And then you don't necessarily have to worry about it too much. The attorney will take over. There'll be depositions and things like that. But from a financial standpoint, for the most part, you're capped at your deductible.
Yeah, and this is why we highly recommend when doing deals, don't discount yourself, because you need to ask, if something were to go south and go bad, would I have earned enough to at least cover my E&O deductible? So just something to be mindful of in that. All right. Anything else in section 14 that we need to examine?
Now let's scroll up just a little bit. No. So one thing you'll notice on line 427, and some paragraphs will have this, the very last sentence says, this paragraph shall survive closing or termination of the contract. The reason that language is in there is, and if you remember from studying for your exam, once a closing occurs, all of the provisions of the contract merge into the deed. So in essence, the contract disappears, and so do all the provisions, unless it's specifically stated that it survives closing or termination of the contract. Now, obviously, if there's a dispute and you're getting sued, likely either closing occurred and there was a problem after, or closing never occurred and they're trying to blame you for it. So that's what allows this paragraph to survive closing. And it may sound like that's a bad thing for you, but if you win and you're correct, then you have no damages. And it's up to the attorneys handling the lawsuit whether or not you get reimbursed for any of your, we'll just call them damages, like, deductible.
All right. So there we go. Come on back. We're going to dive into the default and dispute resolution section, starting with section 15.